Man. Is man the most evolved living being on the planet? For centuries, we have questioned our origins, wondering why we seem so similar to the other living beings on the planet, even though in reality we possess traits that make us profoundly different from everything else we know in nature. The story of the origins of man is still a fascinating mystery today. Professor Marco Ragusa, a professor of biology and genetics at the University of Catania and author of the book The Unnatural Man, will guide us on this incredible and mysterious journey, where there are still many questions waiting for an answer. What makes man different from all the other beings present in nature?
Ours is a fascinating story, and it's also very well written. However, if we look through this story page by page and go back to the original sources, we realize that, while it remains fascinating, this story actually becomes even more intriguing. Because there are, let's say, many unclear points, but the way this story has been spread has completely smoothed over those unclear points. But if a researcher or a scientist honestly examines them objectively, he realizes that the story that comes out is something much more fragmented, much messier, if you will. There are many points that don't match up.
The story of human evolution is very complex. Over the years, scholars have tried to clarify many aspects of the human journey, but what are the most important anomalies we find in the process of human evolution?
The speed with which our species, from ape-like organisms, not apes as we imagine them today, but ape-like organisms, became a primate, hyper-evolved with an emotional and creative intelligence that is unmatched in the natural world, and it alone has practically managed to conquer the world.
The species we belong to evolved in Africa from the genus Homo. To put it simply, we can say that between 7 and 5 million years ago, the first hominids appeared in Africa. Between 4 and 2 million years ago, hominids developed an upright posture that made them bipedal. 1.5 million years ago, Homo erectus appeared, the first hominid whose characteristics set him apart from his ape-like ancestors. He is definitely bipedal, has a larger brain, and is able to use objects as tools. Furthermore, he is the first hominid to cross the borders of Africa and migrate throughout the world. Finally, between 200,000 and 150,000 years ago, again in Africa, Homo sapiens appeared, from whom modern humans are descended. But the time that passed between the appearance of the first hominids and the arrival of Homo sapiens was compared with that of other species is consistent with the pace of evolution.
Zebras, horses, and donkeys all share a common ancestor that lived 4.5 million years ago. Basically, 4.5 million years ago would represent a sort of dawn for our species. And yet, if we think about it, they are very similar to each other. They are so similar that they can even crossbreed with each other, producing sterile offspring. And that's true. For example, we can't do that with monkeys, even though some people have tried. Bipedalism itself is unique to our species. However, even today we don't understand what environmental factors force these monkeys to come down from the trees and to prefer a bipedal gait, which is not more efficient than a quadrupedal one. All the predators we had to deal with were faster than us precisely because they were quadrupeds. Nature often uses the same patterns over and over. The most successful patterns are reused. For example, being a quadruped is something we often find in the animal world. In the aquatic environment, fins, right? Fins are better suited to an aquatic environment, right? Nature has reinvented it several times, so nature always brings back the winning features. Complete bipedalism is unique in nature. Nature had never proposed it before us and would never do it again after us.
Bipedalism is not the only unprecedented feature of our species. Another unique feature, for example, is the loss of fur.
Why did we lose our fur? Here, clearly, there is a whole range of different hypotheses that, in my opinion, don't really hold up. Because the heat is excessive, but we forget that fur in animals is a thermal insulator, both for heat and for cold. So then someone might say, well, what about the elephant? The elephant was once an aquatic animal, so it didn't lose its fur. Whereas we come from animals, and in our case, we definitely did lose our fur. So someone brought up the fact that losing body hair was actually an evolutionary advantage because it spared us from constantly being prey to various parasites that normally attach to fur. But even here, if it were an evolutionary advantage, then I would expect all the animals in the savannah or somewhere like that to be hairless. That's not the case. And then if this story about parasites were true, why, for example, did hair remain around the genitals? That's also where we are, where there are plenty of parasites. And what about hair? When it comes to hair, it's said they act as a mechanical shield, a barrier against UV rays. But then, would this also apply to the rest of the body? So why did we lose the hair on our arms, but not on our heads? Obviously, there's an explanation that makes sense, which is what is called sexual selection. Whenever we can't explain a trait in humans, we fall back on this idea. It's convenient. But what does sexual selection actually mean? It simply means that it's a type of selection that is no longer managed by nature, right? But there is selection by the partners. So, for some reason, our ancient ancestors must have thought it was sexier to mate with hairless individuals. But they still kept some hair on their heads compared to completely hairless primates or completely hairy primates. Well, I mean, that kind of makes sense. But in my opinion, this kind of idea is heavily influenced by the concept of aesthetics we have today. So hair is seen a bit like the same goes for breasts, for large breasts. It has no physiological function because they breastfeed just the same whether the breasts are large or small. This too falls under what is called sexual selection.
Another characteristic that makes humans unique in the animal kingdom is the particular difficulty in procreating. We are the only living beings who, in order to bring offspring into the world, need assistance.
The fact that human childbirth is like this isn't just about pain, because you could argue that a painful birth might not affect Darwinian fitness in a highly medicalized society. Let's just say it's painful. In reality, in developing countries, these obstetric difficulties are still the cause of millions of deaths. Why does this happen? This is due to, let's say, an infernal combination between bipedalism and a big head. That is, the two traits that, perhaps more than any others, characterize our species. It's the reason why the newborns of our species might never be born and their mothers could die. And why is that? Since we have particularly large heads and being bipeds have undergone changes to our pelvis, what happens? After 9 months, the head outgrows the birth canal. Too big. That's the reason why there's so much difficulty in giving birth. If you look at the animal world, at mammals, animals give birth painlessly. The young simply slips out, and in many cases can get to its feet right away. Standing up, something our species can't do because we are born extremely immature. And we are born immature precisely to prevent the head from developing even more inside the body. Otherwise, if we stayed even 15 days or a month longer, birth would be impossible. There is a species that has difficulty producing offspring, and clearly that's one of those aspects that, let's say, greatly reduces Darwinian fitness. Being prolific as a species is one of the key aspects for evolutionary success. When being prolific leads not only to the death of the child, you might say, well, they can have another child, but also to the death of the mother, you have to understand that this is one of those aspects that could put an end to a species right at its beginning. And all of this is due to the fact that we are bipeds and we have these big heads. Also, because of these big heads, since we can't let them fully mature in the womb, We are born, so to speak, we come into the world extremely immature. And this is also quite a curious thing in the animal world. Within a year and a half, the young tend to become self-sufficient. In our species, that's absolutely not the case. This is an important aspect because it has created and creates very prolonged parental care over time. Among other things, this leads the mother to a very significant energy expenditure in caring for the young. And again, this is something that doesn't exist in the rest of the animal world. It's one of those things that could put the species at risk.
As we've seen in various ways, humans are unique in the animal kingdom, but these are just the most obvious aspects of our uniqueness. In the next episodes, we will specifically analyze traits that could potentially challenge everything we have thought about our origins up to now. Let us know in the comments what you think. See you in the next episode.